an amazing thing for me to go back and look a little bit at that battle. My dad really never really talked very much about it.
Right.
Even though he was such an active veteran in the Purple Heart after his wound and all the way through his life.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I searched through Bob Going's book and couldn't find any mention of your father, so then I turned to Bob Cudmore's book, and he did have a brief mention of your father, his being wounded, getting the Purple Heart, and being the national commander of the Purple Heart, which seems to me, of course, not only is the Purple Heart an honor, but being the national commander of it, I would think, would be an honor as well.
Oh boy, it certainly was. And the thing that I'll never forget was that in 1976, following an act of Congress in 1975, the Tomb of the Unknowns were awarded the well, I guess you don't really get an award the Purple Heart. You're a recipient of the Purple Heart.
Okay.
But the trophy was placed by my father and Admiral Holloway in the trophy case of the Tomb of the Unknowns at Arlington National Cemetery. Something I'll never forget.
Wow. I know, I was at your family homestead once with Anthony, and he showed me some photographs, and one of them, your father was with a lot of dignitaries. Maybe that was there was a lot of people representing other countries, ambassadors, it seems like.
Yeah,
was there a president there, a vice president, or a senator or something? I can't remember now.
No, well, there were a number of senators and congressmen, but the name that really stands out for me was Admiral Holloway.
Oh, yeah, sure, definitely.
He was, because at the time he was acting chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Right.
But that was quite a thing. And then my dad got to tour where the guards are selected by their height and waist and chest size. I mean, they all look like they were cut from the same
Yeah.
But he got to inspect their quarters afterwards. And
right.
That was quite an honor for him too.
Wow. So how many years was he commander of the Purple Heart?
Well, that's 1 year. But he rose from the ranks. You know, he started out here locally, and he held all the chairs in the state organization, and then eventually up to the national organization, and then followed by my mom, who became the national president.
Wow, that I didn't know about.
I'll tell you though, the lesson for me really, it was an amazing thing, because like I told you, my dad never really talked much about the war, but you know, I grew up around all these men who were members of the Purple Heart.
Right.
And so, as a boy, you know, I used to think that grown men went to war. You know, that was my image as a little boy. And it wasn't until, you know, later in life that I realized that they went in their youth.
I know. When I look back at the guys who went to war, they're guys like, you know, young guys, 21. To me, they're boys. When I look back, and girls now. Of course, in World War II, the women did a lot of things. They even flew airplanes, but they didn't go into combat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that this story didn't get enough attention. I thought it needed a little more attention. And your father was in the engineer, right?
235th Combat Engineers.
And what was his job per se?
Well, they were combat engineers. They did a lot of bridge building, culverts, things like that. In this particular battle, was opening up the road to Rome.
Right.
I think there were four battles there, and my dad was involved in it, and all. He had 4 battle stars, so he was involved in each of them. But they were, and it was interesting to me, because I never realized that, you know, really he was kind of like for a time there, he was like fighting the war for a living. It wasn't like, I mean, usually those things are punctuated, you know, with some degree of downtime in between. But when they were trying to open this road to Rome, he said they would get shelled while they were trying to put the culverts in. He was a combat engineer.
Right.
And then dawn would break, and they would pull back, and they would sleep during the day. Then at night they would go up again to do construction. This would happen day after day, and then eventually he got hit.
So what was he doing when he got hit? Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Did he tell you?
Yeah, they were trying to straighten out one of the culverts that had been placed off center, crooked. So they drove up to try to straighten that out, and that's when he got hit by mortar fire.
Well, I know I worked at the post office for over 5 years, and we had a fellow there, Ralph Tambasco, who was over in Italy, and one of his jobs was to string telephone lines, and he was up on a pole and got hit by a sniper and ended up with a broken back. He was another interesting guy. Of course, there's a lot of guys from Amsterdam and Montgomery County were over there in Italy, and at the Battle of Monte Cassino. I know I've had people come into my store who were looking for information on Monte Cassino because one of their relatives had been in the battle. It was interesting too because you had Italians on both sides of that battle, and you had Italian Americans on the Allied side. So it was quite interesting. For Italian people, fighting in Italy must have been a kind of a bittersweet thing, maybe, you know.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what my father said about that, because he said, in the South, they were Italian Americans who were fighting, kind of viewed as traitors to their country. He said, but in the North, they were viewed as heroes.
Sure.
He said, but the part they didn't get was that I was an American.
Right. Did your father speak Italian at all?
Oh yeah.
So
it's unfortunate, but like when we grew up at a time where we did not learn the language. And that was only one regret that I can think of through my whole upbringing.
Well, up until maybe the 60s or so, the driving model, or whatever you might want to call it, was Americanizing people that moved here. And it's changed since then. In the 60s, everybody took pride in their ethnicity, so learning English didn't seem to be so important to some of the later people coming here.
I think that's true.
But, well, let's move along to, before we talk about Amsterdam politics, which always seems to be the bread and butter of talk shows around here, did you listen, well, do you have any comments on the governor's State of the Speech or on the whole situation with Sheldon Silver being arrested?
Well, I went to the State of the State message. I like to attend.
Right.
I've attended every one of the governors, and actually going all the way back. One of my favorites, of course, was when George Pataki, when Governor Pataki was in office. The governor still delivered the State of the State message from the assembly chambers, and so he would be down in the well, and up above him would be introduced by the lieutenant governor. And in this particular year, Betsy McCoy, she remained standing.
I remember that.
It was the most awkward thing, like for the whole thing. I don't know how the governor delivered his remarks, because that would be unnerving to me to have somebody standing.
I wonder if anyone ever asked her why did she do that. I mean, I never heard why. I remember it happening and people saying, "What is this? This is bizarre." But I don't ever remember anyone explaining why she did it.
Yeah, right. I don't either. At any rate, so in the governor's, he laid out plans, and a lot of which had to do with education reform, and I think was not necessarily so received by teachers. But I think one of the things he's doing is like he's turning everything into something that's performance based before there's going to be state money spent.
Right.
And that theme was carried on, and we see that in how grants are given out in the state now, and everything is competitive. The casinos was a competitive thing.
It is competitive, and actually I'm going to jump ahead to something that I was going to talk about later. But the Mohawk Valley Economic Development grants that were given out. Did you see the list of those?
Yeah.
I wrote a piece about it for the Gazette, and I don't know if you saw that, but let's just take the ones for Montgomery County. City of Amsterdam, City Hall restoration, $224,625. City of Amsterdam, Mohawk Valley Gateway Overlook, $325,000 for art, to install public art. City of Amsterdam, Phase 5 sewer improvements, $600,000. Village of Fultonville water system improvements, $600,000. Nelliston wastewater, $30,000. Okay, that's what we got in Montgomery County. What do you think of those, especially in relation to economic development?
Right. Well, I got to say, I write grants for a living.
Yes.
Along with my two business partners, and these monies are set aside through different agencies, and what happens is typically during during the process. It used to be, for instance, if you were writing an application to Parks and Recreation, that professionals at Parks and Recreation reviewed those grants and did the scoring. Now the first 20% is done by these local regional teams, and the governor's trying to get more involvement there from the people who are actually living in the area that where these grants are going. So they score the first 20 points now, and they've set up their priorities, and so when you write now, you got to try to fit within, address those priorities. And so I think within the context of how the grants are written now, that makes sense that some of those things would be given in that way. And the other thing is that they do try and do a geographic distribution of grants.
I see.
So within areas.
But Fulton County didn't get any.
No.
Do you have any conception as to why that happened?
I don't, and I'm going to look into that a little bit more, probably from a business point of view, because I think we could help them out up there.
Right, right. And this is the only time that's happened. They've been doing this since, I think, 2011,
Right.
and this is the only time a county has not gotten anything.
Yeah.
Now, somebody said to me, well, it's because they got a lot last year. Well, I looked into it, and they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
They got less than the other counties in the Mohawk Valley region
Yeah.
last year. So it's just an odd thing, and you know, some people are saying, well, it's political because Fulton County kind of likes to poke the governor in the eye because they're so conservative, but then Schoharie County is too, and Schoharie County is only slightly less conservative than Fulton County, slightly less Republican. If you go down Schoharie County, you see signs all over the place about getting rid of the SAFE Act, yet Schoharie County got grants.
There's always a little bit of politics behind that. I think we're being naive not to.
Right.
I'll tell you another story about when I was mayor, because one time I was upset because we didn't get our CDBG grant, and so I made an appointment to go down to the office of, well, now it's called the Office of Community Renewal, and of course this was during a Republican administration, and so I said, I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I just want to know if the reason that I didn't get the grant was because there's a D after my last name, and I don't mean Duchessi.
Right. Well,
So they assured me that was not the case, but then the next 2 years we had some success.
right.
Who knows?
Yeah, yeah. So speaking up helped.
I think so.
Well, let's jump into Amsterdam here.
Sure.
I don't know if you saw the two videos on the internet, the one that the mayor did and the one that one of the Amsterdam high school student did.
I've not seen hers. I've seen the high school student.
Okay. Well, the mayor's video is beautiful. I have to give her credit. She did a great job. 17 minutes. But obviously, as the sitting mayor, there was nothing negative in it. You didn't see any rundown houses or anything like that.
Right.
It was very well done. And then this young lady, Jillian Foster, and another friend did an assignment for, I think, of a CNN or C-SPAN assignment for school,
Yep.
and their video, was exactly
Yes.
the opposite.
Right.
So what do you make of this?
Well, I think it's pretty much understandable, all those things. I'm going to tell you, I've been on these talk shows before when it comes to discussing the mayor's administration. I'd like to explain, first of all, I really understand how difficult it is.
Sure.
And I will share with you what I shared with her personally with respect to the upcoming election. Because this mayor is a fighter. She's tough.
She's very tough.
And she'll make a good accounting of herself.
Right.
But the problem that she faces after 2 terms in office is pretty much, what did you do for me tomorrow?
Right.
It's something that my father taught me too, by
Yes.
the way. And that there's nobody deader than last year's hero was the other. and so the thing is that this mayor has all the problems as they exist in the city and have existed. Look at all of the upstate cities were in trouble, and it can't be because we've had bad mayors year after year after year simultaneously.
Right.
There are economic factors at work whereby the jobs have left the state, and cities are left really with excess housing stock. And this excess when people worked in the mills, these houses were built close to the mills. People walked to work during that time. So now we have a situation where we have excess housing stock. It drives the prices down for housing, And we're in this terrible, terrible cycle. And, the tax base is left to fewer people. You have increasing cost of services. Local government is hard.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what we're doing up there in Montgomery County or the next level of government with the state assembly or senate. You see Sheldon Silver being arrested. You're like, oh yeah, well, business as usual, things carry on. But down here, you drive down the street where that vacant house is.
Right.
And so. That's what makes it hard. So I'm not too quick to criticize some of these things. And then other things have never changed. I was just talking about, I had my own Fourth Ward alderman when I was mayor.
Right.
Marion Smith showed up to a common council meeting one time and accused me of directing DPW to waste salt during the winter.
Wow.
Now, where did that come from, and how do you defend yourself against that? So these are, I don't see anything new going on.
No.
I mean, maybe my eyes are old.
Well, well, speaking of not seeing anything new, there's been this issue about the mayor's car, which is, to me, seems kind of a bit on the penny ante side. But if you go back, I just purchased all these political pamphlets from 100 years ago. And talk about mudslinging. Unbelievable. And one of the things was the mayor's car expense in 1916. Now, the mayor didn't have his own car back then, but he had a car expense. So listen to this pamphlet. This is written by Theron Aiken. You're familiar with him. He was quite a character, I guess. He says, in 1916, the auto hire for city officials was $690.88. And the comptroller's report says of that amount, $183 was wholly or in part for the mayor. That was Mayor Klein. The report then reads, one claim for auto hire reads, cab hire 2 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. Then, in astonishment, it continues, such hours for official business are, to say the least, unusual. I wonder what Jimmy the Clean Government Advocate was doing this night. Official business, eh? Then down below he goes on talking about himself. First of all, I have been sober and in my normal mind every day. I have given every minute of my time to the duties of mayor. When I left the city on business, I came back in the same suit of clothes and didn't leave my frock coat to be pressed because I had fallen into a swimming pool in a YMCA building. Now listen to this line. It never cost the city 1 cent for cab hire to go to Albany to see the girls. So you're right, nothing has changed.
No.
In fact, I think actually this is a little worse than what we hear today, although on some of the Facebook pages, which I have exited because I couldn't take it anymore, the mudslinging is just unreal.
Just indulge me for 1 second,
Sure.
too, because, I used to be the fire chief here in Amsterdam, and I went through it when we were trying to buy a new pumper. And fast forward, when I became the mayor, I used to like to read the old proceedings of the Common Council. And I found this one meeting whereby the fire chief was asking for a new horse, and the Common Council asked him how much the horse would cost, and he told them $100. And of course, the alderman piped up, nonsense, you can buy a horse for $75. And another guy said, I know a guy, he's got a horse, he'll let you try it out for $50. If you don't like it, you could bring it back. And then I had to go forward to try to find out how the thing finally ended up, and the chief went back complaining about the $50 horse. So they gave him the $100 to buy the new one.
Wow. Yeah.
Nothing has.
Yeah, nothing has. And,
That's what it is.
Well, then there's another one here where he says, he talks about Theron Aiken, and by the way, his opponent...
He became mayor, Theron.
Yes, he did. And his opponent in one election came back with scurrilous things, saying that he had deliberately rocked the rocking chair over his kid's leg, and then when his wife came in to berate him about it, or to deal with it, he, gave her a hard time. And that's just one of many, many things that were said about Theron Aiken, but he in turn was throwing it around, accusing... listen to this. You spoke in last night's recorder of the great saving made by Bob Austin as an engineer of $12,000 in fees, which were saved for the city of Amsterdam. But you did not mention the fact that 80 bags of cement were taken up to Bob Austin's house on Lindbergh Avenue, used when Callahan built the house. You did not mention about Big Ike Rosie taking the painters, employees of the city of Amsterdam, up to Johnstown to paint his mother and father-in-law's barns and chicken coops.
Yeah.
So I had to bring that in and read it, because this stuff that goes on in our Common Council has been going on forever. It's pure.
Oh yeah, and you can only imagine like if Facebook had been available.
Right. They had to go out and actually print up pamphlets and hand them out to get their mud.
And who was the president that was accused of was it Taft accused of fathering a child?
Yes, and I think he owned up to it though, didn't he?
But the big chant whenever he showed up was "Mama, where's my pa?"
Yeah, that's right.
And then when he won, he said, "Gone to the White House, ha ha ha."
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, actually, Taft is an underrated president. So when I look at these two videos, of course, I see two sides of Amsterdam, and I think the reality is that Amsterdam is a mixture of both of those videos. Both well done. I think that the young ladies did a good job for a high school project, but I don't think what they showed is 100% of what Amsterdam's about. But now you've been out of office for 12, 13 years, I guess?
Since 2003 was my last year.
Okay. And so looking at Amsterdam over this time, do you see that Amsterdam has remained the same? Looking at everything, crime, taxes, jobs, you name it. Has Amsterdam declined, gone ahead, stayed about the same?
Mm-hmm. I think in many ways, it depends really on what you're talking about, what areas you're talking about.
Right.
I think one of the things it's always controversial is this waterfront redevelopment, which I support and I really like, and I think that we have to understand that these communities have to really redefine themselves.
Right.
And I always like the whole notion of treating some of these parks not in terms of these false promises of job creation or all those other things, but just for what it is. I mean, a park I think is nicer than some old deteriorated downtown.
Right.
So I think that's good.
Well, yeah, and I think the park and with the overlook, it's going to be beautiful. I've seen a couple of images of the artwork that they're planning to put on there, and I'm not crazy about it. I think they need something a little better than that. But I'm looking forward to it. And the piers are in the river, and what I've said to some people who've been opposing the overlook bridge all along is, why are you doing it now? The piers are in the river. What's the point of going on and on about it now at this point? And I haven't been able to get a good answer from any of them. And I've said to them, why don't you get behind it? Now that it's being built, get behind it.
Yeah, and I think, and it took me a little while to come to understand this, because when you're in the thick of the fight, and I'm a fighter too, by the way.
Right.
And I can be a little prickly or defensive when at times, but looking back, it's a good way to take out the frustrations for other things, and so and it becomes symbolic of those frustrations. And so when you look at those deteriorating houses on certain streets, a common refrain might be, why are we spending money on this bridge when this is there's something else, we have so many other needs.
Right.
But typically the monies are set aside and made available for specific projects that are seen as enhancements to the community. And so that's the context that I look at it in.
Well, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that as the Overlook Bridge being symbolic, a symbolic thing for the opponents of the current administration or previous administrations even. But I look forward to the waterfront being developed too, because I think Amsterdam's unique in that we straddle the river. What other community on the Mohawk straddles a river? Well, Utica does, but what does it matter in Utica? There's not much of a river there. Whereas here, you got a river, and eventually there's no reason why we couldn't have the best waterfront on the Mohawk.
Yeah, and one of the things, and what I'm hoping that this will do is, I think I've always looked at a big problem that we have here is that we have no center core anymore.
Right.
And that's really due to the urban renewal and what it did to this community. Not just building this mall in the absolute center of Main Street, east, west, north, south, but moving the bridge to the east. Also,
right.
It took what used to be the main intersection. All of the cities who grew up along the river, they grew up in grids that were where the streets were parallel and perpendicular to the river.
Right.
And now we end up with all these loops and things.
Yes.
I remember one time when I went to visit the mayor of Rome, Joe Griffos, he's now a state senator. I said, boy, you guys got a lot of money in the 70s, didn't you? He says, well, how can you tell? I says, because you can't get to East Dominic Street from West Dominic Street.
Yes, many cities.
Same thing.
Yeah, and it's like Utica feels to me like it's been split in half. You know, 8 and 12 run right through the middle of it, and it's difficult. All the cities have become difficult for pedestrians, and the walker has been basically forgotten.
They really
in
have,
a lot of cities.
Right.
Well, time's going a lot faster than I thought. So I want to make sure I get one or two more questions in here. Have you seen any encouraging signs in the city in the past decade?
Boy, that I just don't look at it like in those terms. It's just to me.
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
No, like I've always had just a more practical view of city government and what it does, and to this day, like I just don't think that government really is local government especially is in a position to create jobs or any of those things.
It doesn't seem so.
And I think we need to do the business of government. The one thing that I would like to see in Amsterdam is really that we should come to terms with the size community that we are.
Right.
This community should be smaller, not larger. We talk about growth and sharing the tax base. There's no good way to do that. You know, whenever we talk about growing the tax base, we talk about job creation, and we offer the lure of of a tax cut to a tax break for that job creation. That's counterintuitive to begin with. And I think looking back, I don't think that we can point to any of these things as being successful. I don't think they've made the difference at all.
Right. Well, no, I mean, unemployment, all the statistics for Montgomery County, for Amsterdam, Montgomery County, have not really changed much over the years. We've seen businesses come and go. And then another example farther down the road, Super Steel. Remember when Palczak came, Super Steel was going to save the Mohawk Valley. Yeah. And then what happened to it? It's gone. Yeah.
Well,
but
you just saw the battery thing in
GE. And the only positive thing I've seen is Solar City planning to open up in Edson Park. Supposed to employ 50 people. But one thing I do like is that Ada has started working on downtown Amsterdam, and I think that's been a positive thing. They fixed those buildings up, and they've got them most of the things rented out.
Yeah, it's really those small businesses that should be the background.
That's what I think. And you know, and all the gifts, donations, what do you call them? Grants that were given out. Oneana was given $20,000, which is a very small amount, to help start micro businesses, and that's what I see. People, and you've done it. You've started businesses.
I'm doing
Wicked
it again.
Walrus.
Yeah.
It's funny
I'm going
because
to be designing handbags again.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. You going to open a place for it, or?
Yeah, it's going to be at 54 Bridge Street.
Fantastic.
The bags are going to be called 54 Bridge.
Wow.
And the logo, the pendant, is going to be a mock bridge token.
Wow.
Because we're going to be really at the foot of the new walk bridge. I think that Bridge Street is just fantastic.
Yeah.
And I just like being there.
Right.
I love Paul Perillo's Lutimo and all the Perillo's businesses.
Well, that's the thing. I've said this before about the Perillos, and the same is true of you and Anthony, is that you guys have been entrepreneurs over the years. You've started businesses. You haven't waited for the government to hand you money. You've gone out and done stuff. And that, I think we need a little bit more of that. People willing to step forward and start business. My business was started with all my wife's and my money. We never took anything from the government. It's a struggle downtown Amsterdam. I admit it's a struggle. I don't make a lot of money, but I'm there, and I'm there to stay, and we need more businesses like that, and people willing to say, well, I'm not going to wait for the government. I'm going to start a business.
That's right. It makes me crazy when I hear, why don't we have a XYZ store?
Because nobody started one.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we're almost out of time. I cannot believe One or two last questions real quick. So far, Mike Villa's come forward to run again. The mayor says she's going to run again. Yeah. Mike Villa's come forward. He's planning to run. Do you see anyone else on the horizon possibly might throw their hat in the ring, or do you think that's pretty much going to be it?
The only thing I know for sure is that I'm not running.
You're not running.
Yeah, I don't know. I think with Mike announcing early, that was pretty good. That was a savvy political move.
Right.
And also, he'll get to be heard on issues as the year goes on.
Well, what do you see as the strengths and weaknesses of the two candidates?
Well, I think the weakness that the mayor has simply is that she's been there for 8 years, and from my own experience, I think people get tired. I
Yeah.
never felt any animus like when people didn't vote for me.
Right.
I won 2 elections, I lost 2. I think the people get it right half the time.
Right. Yeah.
and then for Mike, he has an advantage because he can express kind of an optimum result if he gets elected,
Right.
a more perfect Amsterdam, because he doesn't have to defend arguing about the mayor's car.
He doesn't have a
any of those
record.
things.
Yeah. I think his last name's going to help him a little bit because people remember Mario Villa. He was mayor for 12 years altogether, and a lot of people liked him. So I think the name's going to help him. But like you said, Ann is a fighter, and it ought to be an interesting race. And I have a feeling one way or another it's probably going to be somewhat close. I don't know. I'm not a very good prognosticator. Well, if it's like the last one, that was quite close, and
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe this one is going to be too. So we're about ready to have our other 2 guests come in.
Well, let me take a minute to say
Sure.
thank you. It was certainly a privilege and an honor to be your first guest.
Well, I was thinking, who could I have come on that's intelligent, respected by people, someone I've disagreed with on time, but never, ever lost respect for, and that's you, Duke.
Oh, how kind.
And
Thank
by
you
the
so
way,
much.
my father-in-law got a letter from you and was so pleased by that. It was really.
He passed on some really kind remarks about me in one of his letters, and I'll never forget that. The feeling that I had when I read that, and it made me feel really good, and I hope he's feeling better.
Yeah, I hope so too. But he the one thing he said, and I agreed with him totally on, is that whether people agree with you or don't agree with you, as far as I'm concerned, they've got to respect you. And that's one reason I wanted you to be my first guest on this show. Plus, I know I've talked to you in the past. I've talked to your brother. We always have good conversations about things, politics, and history. You're a reader. He's a reader. We always enjoy talking to each other. And I learned from you guys. So hopefully down the road you might be willing to come back.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank
Good
you,
luck
Duke.
with your program.
Okay. Thanks. Okay, we're going to take a break now.
Waste and Metal Incorporated in Gloversville is urging you to get involved in the community. Whether it's food for a family in crisis, checking in on a senior, or giving blood, you can make a difference in someone's life. This message is presented by Bornt Waste and Metal Incorporated at 166 Elmwood Avenue Extension in Gloversville. Call 518-725-1597. That's 725-1597, serving our area with pride since 1930.
If your child has a drug problem and nothing seems to help, don't stop dead in your tracks. A chemical dependency counselor can still help your family get back on the right track. A tip in your family's interest, presented by the members, Ladies Auxiliary, and staff of the Loyal Order of the Moose here in Johnstown. Working year-round to make our area a better, safer, drug-free place to live and raise a family. It's the members, Ladies Auxiliary, and staff of the Loyal Order of the Moose here in Johnstown. Asking all parents to reach out to your kids now, before they reach for drugs, chemicals, or alcohol. It will save their future and life.
Taking a look at the weather, brought to you by Patriot Federal Bank, proudly serving Fulton and Montgomery County since 2005, with locations on Route 30 in Amsterdam, Erie Boulevard in Canajoharie, and North Comrie Ave in Johnstown.
I'm Tim Everhart. We'll look at the weather for the AM 1490 WCSS Listening area. Today, slight chance of snow, mostly cloudy, high near 32. Tonight, slight chance of snow showers, mostly cloudy, low around 19. Tomorrow, partly sunny, high near 23. Tomorrow night, mostly cloudy, low around 8. And that was the weather for the AM 1490 WCSS Listening area.
This weather report brought to you by Patriot Federal Bank, proudly serving Fulton and Montgomery County since 2005, with locations on Route 30 in Amsterdam, Erie Boulevard in Canajoharie, and North Comrie Ave in Johnstown. We offer a variety of savings and checking products as well as commercial, residential, and consumer lending.
I'm Tim Everhart with the birthdays for Saturday, January 24th, 2015. Happy birthday to Kathleen Joyce, Donna Frederick, Nancy Siegel, and David DeRossi.
The Sawdust Cafe reminds listeners to give blood as often as you can. By doing so, you could be helping to save the life of a community member. Every blood donor protects himself, his family, the community he lives in, and the entire world. So please give blood today. This message comes to you from the Sawdust Cafe, the Sawdust Cafe. For great food, stop by 105 County Highway 112 in Bleecker or give them a call at 773-0405. That's 773-0405.
This is Rick Ruby, and I'm inviting you to visit Ruby & Query and give yourself a new home for a lot less this new year. Replace your refrigerator, freezer, oven, dishwasher, or any other kitchen appliance with the latest models from trusted brands like GE, Frigidaire, Samsung, or Whirlpool. Or buy yourself extra time on laundry day with state-of-the-art washer and dryers that will be gentle on your clothes and even more gentle on your wallet. Right now at Ruby & Query, you can save a bundle on new carpet, laminate, tile, or hardwood flooring. Get the pad for free with select carpet purchases. And all in-stock vinyl is 36% off the sale price while supplies last. Don't miss your chance to update your floors with low New Year's prices and make your home feel like new. We'll help you choose the flooring that matches all of your family's needs and keep cash in your pocket with up to 48 months special financing. Start the new year off right by saving on a new look for your home. Visit us in Johnstown across Route 38 from the Holiday Inn or online at rnq.com. Don't just settle for any big box. Experience the difference at the right big box.
Dan Weaver, I'm back with Valley Vox, and we have two other guests here this morning. I'll probably sound sexist, but they're two beautiful ladies. You know, I remember when I used to think women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s were old and ugly, but boy, they're getting better looking every year. Anyway.
Watch that.
But I've known both of these ladies, Maureen Hand and Donna Palczak, for quite some time, and they're both very involved with the Amsterdam Free Library and a program called Amsterdam Reads. And I'm going to ask them to tell us a little bit, what is Amsterdam Reads?
Well, I'll start with this year. It's in its 9th year. It was started in 2007, and its purpose is to enrich the lives of many in the Amsterdam community through reading and related activities, thereby enhancing literacy and a sense of community and promoting the Amsterdam Free Library. That is our mission statement. And now, Donna, do you want to talk about how the first program started?
Amsterdam started this program in 2007, but the whole program started out in Seattle in 1998. And somehow Schenectady and Saratoga jumped on it before we did. So we got that Ann Westfall and John Naple was the one who planted the seed in Ann Westfall's ear that this would be a good thing for Amsterdam to do. So that's where it began, with John Naple's idea, putting it into Ann Westfall, and soon a small committee began, and we were small in the beginning. And at one point I said to Maureen earlier today, I thought that we would even be disbanding. But all of a sudden through our last couple years, we're up to a committee of about 15, and each year we seem to be getting more enthusiastic people. So Amsterdam began in 2007, and every year we have a committee of, I don't know, maybe 5 people who read, 7 people, who I'm not one of them, who take suggestions from every place to read a selection of books, what you think is a good book for the Amsterdam Read. So by the time fall comes around, they have whittled that down to 5 books that they put out for nomination. And that's exactly what happens. We have a voting process. So you may have seen that through the community. You may have been to a breakfast or a banquet or just know a friend or have seen it on the website to vote for a book. And then, of course, the one with the highest amount of votes wins. And this year it was, right down to the wire, it was a 1-vote winner.
Wow.
That was, and I'm the one who counts them, so I was going, wow, this can't be, but here we are, 1 vote. So this year's winner is Orphan Train, and by Christina Baker Klein, and that beat the Bucolic Plague, which is about the Beekman brothers in Sharon Springs.
Yeah. So the local book didn't win this, or,
did
not win this time.
We were almost hoping we
Right.
would win.
Yeah, because it would have made it easy for you to plan.
We had to trip all the way
right,
back.
sure. Go down to Schoharie County and right. It's interesting. I found this lady was actually, Klein was born in England, but she moved and grew to the United States and grew up in Maine. So the orphan train. Can you tell me what is an orphan train? It's some kind of train. What is it? What does it do?
Well, it actually started in, I think, the first train in New York, and it took kids who were just left on the street, more or less. Literally, they had no place to go, and they would bring them out in the Middle West to see if they could either get adopted or sometimes just to work. The workers, or the people out there needed workers for their farms. And so that's really how it started.
So it was a way of dealing with what they used to call street Arabs back in that day, orphans or street Arabs. And now Amsterdam, of course, had 2 orphanages, so we were fortunate. We had the children's home, and then there was another one run by the sisters.
Sisters of some, I don't know who it was, but I know it was a religious order, I believe up on Market Hill.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
So it's not likely that Amsterdam had any children who were sent out on these orphan trains.
No, I think
I
they
haven't
mostly
heard.
went to the
Haven't heard they were.
Midwest. That's what they really needed, workers for their farms.
But we know the trains probably passed right through here because
Probably.
I
did.
never thought of it, but probably.
this is a main line over here, and we know Lincoln's funeral train went through here, and all kinds of important trains go right through Amsterdam. It's not something we do think about a lot, but I'm sure some of those orphan trains did.
I was amazed when I first read the book because I had never heard of
I hadn't either.
orphan trains all
I
my
hadn't
life.
either.
By the way, PBS did a documentary or a program on orphan trains.
And there are several programs on YouTube also.
Okay.
Yes, that is also on it. And the library also has a film. Maybe it's from the documentary on the orphan train
Okay.
that you can take out.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, so we have events related, well, each book, each year, the book we have events that go along with the book. And our first event is February 8th, and it will be a book discussion at the Amsterdam Library. And Bob Cudmore will be our Master of Ceremonies, and he is also going to play part of an interview he did with the author
Great.
of Orphan Train.
Now, Orphan Train is fiction, though.
Yes,
but
it's
it's
a fictionalized
on
account
fact.
of
based on the reality.
Actual accounts,
Yeah.
yes.
We were talking earlier. You said that the book Orphan Train ends up positively, but we do know from history that it didn't always end up that way. Many times these orphans were taken in by farmers who were just looking for a hired hand more than anything, and that there was some abuse involved.
They were mistreated, yes.
Right.
The main character, I said to you, Dan, has a positive, I don't want to give the book away, but there's a positive ending. But she has a few situations that prior to that weren't happy.
Right.
And a love interest of hers has a different scenario.
Well, the vast majority of people want their books to end up on a positive note. I've noticed, I remember one year I was on a committee with Maureen, and I suggested a book called The Orchard. It was a memoir, and there's actually 2 books out called The Orchard that are memoirs, and both of them tend to be a little on the dark side, although I thought the one that I nominated actually had a lot of positives in it, because it was about a woman in the Depression who decided she was going to try to save their family orchard, but in the end she failed. But I thought what was positive in that book was her just indomitable spirit, and even when that failed, she was a Radcliffe-trained woman, and she had worked in museums and that kind of thing. And when that project failed, she went to work in factories, and then she married a man, and they went out on a fishing boat. So anyway, but I'm kind of getting off the subject here, but I have noticed that most people want a book with some of a happy ending, and I guess looking around at our world today, I guess you get enough negativity through the news.
We like
so
happy endings.
Yeah, so
We
you
do.
want
We
some
need
happy,
some happy endings.
Right.
I want to tell you about our second.
Oh, wait, I haven't,
oh,
let me
okay.
go on about the first one. With Bob Cudmore, I told you that he is going to play, or part of the interview that he did, and then he's going to talk about the orphanages that were in Amsterdam. I guess his sister worked at one. I don't remember one being on Market Street. I remember what we used to call the children's home,
Which was torn down
on Guy
eventually.
Park.
Yeah.
my mother used to tell me if I didn't behave, she was going to send me there. That's how I remember.
Well, some children in Amsterdam ended up being farmed out to Albany. In fact, my father-in-law, who doesn't mind me saying this, he was one that, after his father died, his mother had trouble with him, and he ended up in a Catholic home in Albany. And he's written about it. I actually published a piece that he wrote on that in one volume of Upstream, the annual thing that I put out, published, about his experiences. And being in those orphanages wasn't always easy either. I mean, you see Oliver Twist and these other movies that talked about orphanages in that time, and so that wasn't always easy. Anyway, Maureen, I cut in. Go ahead.
Okay, well, and Bob is going to talk about the orphanages, and then when he finishes, we will have a book discussion led by Judith Prest, who does facilitation of books for the Mohawk Valley Library Service. So she will lead the discussion on Orphan Train. She is a licensed social worker, a creativity coach, and a poet, as well as she facilitates books. So I hope that we see you all at the Amsterdam Library on February 8th at 1 o'clock.
And that's a Sunday, right?
Yes, and we will have goodies.
And
Donna bakes.
oh, goodies. What?
We all bake. John Naple is, I always say we're really a baking club that reads books.
Right.
Our second activity will be May 17th at the Century Club. And I just want to say how generous the Century Club always is to the Amsterdam Read. They're a good friend to us. Whenever we ask to book or have anything there, they're more than willing to let us do that. And a woman named Nancy Marie Payne from Bern, she's our neighbor, is going to give a 1-hour presentation, and she starts off with a historical background of Orphan Train, and then she's going to assume the role of a child on the train who ends up at a destination point that is very hard to say. We don't know how to say it. It's D-O-W something or other.
Dogowitch?
We don't know how to say it, but that's where she's going to end up. And then our third event is still being worked on. That's going to be a children's program at the library on a Saturday morning. So that is to be announced. You could see it on the library website or call the library when that'll be. But there is some children's literature about the Orphan Train, and we always like to incorporate other readers than just the adults. Other years we've had some books where the students have joined in with us. But the wider the scope of the readers, the happier we are.
That's great. Now, in previous years, how many people have shown up for these events, like at the Century Club?
50, 70?
We've gotten,
Yeah.
when we first started, sometimes we'd get like 10,
Right.
and then maybe it went to 20. But the last few years, they've been pretty well.
We have a
Attended.
loyal group of people
Right.
who come with us no matter what we do.
And have you been able to determine why it's grown in the last few years, just the nature of something successful tends to grow?
Well, I think it's a little bit of everything. I'm still amazed that if we talk about Amsterdam Reads, many people have never heard of it.
Right.
So I think each year more people hear of it, and and they start coming.
So and the idea of these programs, some of them are called One City, One Book. One Community, One
something
Book.
like that.
So
Community reads.
Right. And the idea is for as many people in the community as possible to read a book.
Correct.
And then to talk about it, and it's supposed to help create some type of unity, or at least you're talking about the same issue, even if you're not necessarily agreeing with it, and probably more important issues than some of the things like trash cans, basketball hoops, and mayor's cars. So, anyway.
We also try to help promote our library.
Yes. And
all the good things that go on at the library.
Well, the library is really, the last few years, Nicole's just done a fantastic job.
She has.
She has.
We really have a gem with Nicole.
We do. I moved here in '78, and Nicole's, I don't want to put down any previous librarians, but she's the best. She's the best.
Well, that also is responsible, I think, for the growth of Amsterdam Reads, because she and the other people who work in the library promote it.
Right.
So that certainly
Well,
helps us.
we called her upstairs at our last meeting. Nicole, can we do this children's program? Yeah. can we have it on such and such? Yeah. And can we do this? Yeah. I said, gee, you're so hard to work with, Nicole. She really is. So a good plug for Nicole and what she does.
Yeah.
And she's a recent graduate into that library program, so good for her.
I know. I said to John Naple before she even when she was interim, I said, John, I don't care if she doesn't have the degree. You need to keep her. He said, we're going to. So I thought that was great. And she's also gotten involved with the Historic Amsterdam League lately. So that's another thing. These various community groups, Century Club, Historic Amsterdam League, the library,
It's good for
the museum, some of the things. the
Good
mayor-
for the city.
Yeah, it's all
Very
good.
good.
It's
It's
definitely good for the
positive.
city.
very good for the city.
So we don't have much time left. Just tell me one or two books you've done in the past. I think you did Murder in the Adirondacks one year, right?
Oh, yes, yeah.
And you took a train ride up?
We took a bus up to the place where the original murder that it was based on. Now, see, you caught me off guard.
Right,
I can't think
sorry.
of
It
I
was
knew
Big Moose Lake?
Big Moose Lake.
Big Moose
yes,
Lake.
Actually, the murder that it was about, I remember.
Chester Gillette.
That's it. He was the first man executed in New York State.
Right, and
And
well, the interesting thing was, the murder took place way up in the Adirondacks, almost out of Herkimer County, but it was just barely inside Herkimer County, which is why the trial was held in Herkimer and was a national and even
Oh,
internationally covered trial.
well, what was the original book? An American Tragedy.
Well, yeah, by Theodore Dreiser.
I had to read that in graduate school, and I remember loving that.
Yes, it's a great book. Theodore Dreiser is a great author. So there's been several books written about that, and also there was a film version with
Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor.
exactly a great movie, Place in the Sun.
We showed that as one of our.
We did,
Oh,
right
did you?
down
Yes,
here in
right
one of the
down
theater
here,
rooms
yeah.
here.
Wow.
In 2011, we did Lou Hildebrand's book, Riders Up,
Yes.
which was more of a memoir,
Right.
but it was so great to celebrate his book, and that led us to an activity that we took a trolley, then owned by Karen Houlihan, who was sadly deceased since then, and we took the trolley the way the horses were led to Saratoga from Amsterdam.
Right.
And we had what I didn't realize was a fantastic backtrack experience. The gentleman who led us through, I guess, is Mr. Saratoga. I didn't realize
Okay.
what a tour we had that day.
Right. Well, we're down to 1 minute. By the way, Lou Hildebrandt's wife was my father-in-law's sister. So.
Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, we're down to less than a minute. I just wanted to mention I don't have things firmed up, but I'm hoping in the future to have a couple guys on from Fort Plain Museum talking about the Revolutionary War in the Mohawk Valley. The first annual conference of the American Revolution in the Mohawk Valley will be held on May 1 through 3, 2015. Also, the first ever train show is going to be here in Riverfront Center on April 12th. And I'm hoping to get one of those guys on to talk about that. Boys like their toys.
You mean as in model train?
Model trains. Boys like their toys, whether they're young or 60, 70 years old. So we have a model train place up on Route 30, and he's part of it, so I'm hoping to get him on. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate you coming in and talking with me on Valley Vox.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Radio Network's flagship station. I'm J.C. Hayes, and it's time for Beatles Weekly.
Ladies and gentlemen, honored by their country, decorated by their queen, and loved here in America, here are the Beatles.
I'm Ringo and I play the drums. I'm Paul and I play the bass. I'm George and I play a guitar. I'm John and I too play a guitar.
Welcome, the Beatles. The Beatles.
Well, hello there, Beatle fans. J.C. Hayes back at it again with another edition of Beatles Weekly, everyone's favorite Beatles program. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Hey, on today's show, we're going to go back to this week in 1977 when Paul McCartney and Wings hit #1. We'll play music from that album. In addition, the Beatles' Let It Be sessions began this week in 1969, and we'll hear some behind-the-scenes songs from John, Paul, George, and Ringo. In Beatles news, you can sleep where John Lennon slept. But right now, let's kick off the show with a song you know and you love from the album Yes